In this video, we're going to cover 5 things that you want to check before you even begin an IKEA kitchen install. Hey everyone, it's Kody with Up to Code coming at you again with some IKEA videos. Now this is one that you're going to want to watch before you start any type of installation. You could probably pre-assemble your boxes, but you'll want to know this info before you start building your custom plywood bases, because that's what I recommend you do, is the plywood bases. These are all things you have to keep in mind so that you know how walls, crooked walls, etc., out of level floors, how it all translates, so you can get a good layout and get yourself started. Then you can start building your bases. So let me get into it and show you what I'm talking about. So item number 1 is check all your walls for plumb. Now these aren't necessarily in order. You kind of have to determine all these all at the same time, but this is where I started. I have my trusty old 6 to 10 foot Stabila level. This thing's a beauty. So first thing I did, obviously I have a little bit of work thought put into this project already, but you want to check these walls for plumb. So I'm touching at the top. And if you look down at the bottom, I got a gap at the bottom. So what helps me is when I hold the level true to plumb, then I can kind of visually see what this wall is doing. But this wall is actually leaning in a little bit. Okay, so we checked that wall, and then let's check this wall. So again, I'm going to set it to plumb. You know, it's not deadly, but same thing. This wall is leaning, the top's leaning in towards me. We have a gap at the bottom. I'll show you how that translates just really quick, and then at the end I'll show you one more time. But all these cabinets line up with each other. So when we get to the very end here, this cabinet is the edge of our stove, and it lines up with this one. And if this is a 30 inch and this is a 30 inch, all of them line up. So we need to know what the wall's doing over there, because if the wall's leaning like this, the uppers are going to be further this way, and so we have to make the bases correlate to that. Okay, so I'll show you one more place you need to plumb. So where this pantry's going, I also need to figure out what this wall's doing, so that I got to make sure I have enough room for all my cabinets as well. So if you come in and look, I would say that's pretty much on the money. So this cabinet's going to go in very last, because all these cabinets are going to come along. They're going to line up. The uppers are going to line up here. That wall's again pushing out like this. So this will be my furthest point. So from there I plumb down. So my upper cabinet and my lower cabinet are lined up. Then my fridge panel goes there. Then I space my fridge panel above there for proper room for a 36-inch fridge. And then this is going to be last with a filler over here, so that it doesn't really matter what's going on. This filler's last. So item number 2 is we got to check to see if this corner is square. So normally I would square this corner. I would do it on the as low as possible and avoid any drywall mud in the corner. But for just to show you guys simply, is basically do an increment of 3, 4, 5, which is a right-hand triangle. And in this scenario, we did a 6, 8, 10. So from here, doesn't matter if I do a 6 foot or an 8 foot mark here. Let's go 8 foot because I have a little more space. I would just stretch my tape. I'd make an 8 foot mark over here. I'd do a 6 over here, which is right there. I'd make a mark, and then I need someone's help, and they'd hold the corner of my tape over there. And wherever those points intersect, so if 6, 8, this has to be 10, and if it is, then it's square. And if it's not 10, then you're basically just determining if that corner is squeezed too tight or if it's splayed open. So in this scenario, we actually ended up very, very close to square, which was nice, so that I don't have to get super creative on how to get all the cabinets to line up square and flush with each other. So number 3 is you want to determine the highest point of your floor, and you want to check everything for level. Now this will help you determine the height of your bases. Now I have a separate video on how to determine the size and the height of your basement or bases, which is a totally different video than this. This is just all preparation work, but we got to know the highest point of your floor. So if this floor is actually quite a bit out of level, but you find your highest point, because then from here, you want to be 36 inches from your finished floor to the top of your countertop. And then everything else from there just grows. Because if you don't make or do this step properly, and you're less than 36 inches from finished floor to top of counter, your oven or your range won't fit, your dishwasher won't fit, all of that. So you need to know this before you start building bases. So anyway, yeah, this floor you can see it's dished pretty bad. It's still a little bit out of level, like I gotta lift this end up a little bit. So I would check that quickly. I'm gonna check this quickly, and I just gotta find the highest point. Don't hit anything, Kody. Right, so basically, yeah, everything, well, I know this from before when I did the pre-video, is this corner back over here is the highest point. So to spare you all the boring details, this corner was the highest and everything else was lower from that point. And so that's where we started our base. The top of the countertop will be 36 from the floor, and everything else will just grow slightly, and it doesn't matter. It's better to be too tall than too short. So number 4, I like to just check the walls for straight, just so I have an idea of what's going on with them. So what I do is I just hold my level up on the wall and just kind of gauge if there's any bad humps in the wall, any low spots. And I just got to look from underneath, check that all out. Because with the Ikea system, they have these rails for their uppers. And if the wall is in and out and wavy, then when you put your cabinets together, sometimes if there's like a hump in the wall, for example, it'll push the fronts open and you can't get the fronts tight. So you can see where I've shimmed here and I've shimmed the rail here, because now the rail's actually straight and true. And I'll show you one little trick, something that I got to do as I move along is once I start installing these uppers, over here, there's a gap in this rail for a reason. This is a little extra tidbit of info, but there's a gable panel that goes here and a filler, and then this cabinet's separate. Now, here, if you look, it says out of square with a question mark. Once I get these set and this gable panel on and I hang this, if I'm having problems with this being crooked with the world, it's because this wall is got some waves in it. So I might have to shim this square so that this cabinet fits square with this gable panel. So yeah. So number 5, this is just something that I like to do. It's not super critical. While I'm monkeying around checking all these things out, I actually like to find all my stud locations. So if you look down here, if I find all my stud locations and I mark them, you see there's an X here, there's an X here, there's one here. I have marks on the wall and holes where I've tested screws and I know for a fact, like here I know for a fact there's a stud. And then I just transfer those marks up from the base all the way up to my rail, and I just make marks everywhere. It's all gonna get covered. I don't go hardcore with felt marker or anything crazy, but yeah, I just know where all my studs are. And that way, I've done my research. I know I lay out all my cabinet locations. I know what size to build my bases. I know what height to build my bases. I know where all the studs are. So then when I'm done and ready to set the bases, I just slide them in and I just screw it to the wall. I don't have to oh shoot, now I gotta find the stud and fart around. I can set the base, set the rail, all my studs are located, makes it super easy for install. And yeah, this is slightly higher than the lower cabinet, so I can see it after I put the cabinet in place. So now that we've covered the 5 big things you want to be aware of, now you can actually start putting the kitchen together. Here's just a list of all the little things that we had to do and be aware of during this kitchen installation. You should see a shopping list that looks like this. And if you look closely, it'll tell you every single cabinet and all the parts and part numbers that are associated with that cabinet. This is very important because this is kind of your build list and how you're going to stay organized in all this. So as you can see already that there was a few things that were out of level, out of square and all that. So good thing we took care of that. And now the installation was pretty easy, but I want to show you why those things were so important at the beginning. Okay, so we're going to start in this corner. Because we have this corner cabinet, it's a fixed unit with a fixed dimension. And so are the cabinet next to it here. So is the cabinet here. We don't have any fillers or spacers or anything like that. If we had to, I'm sure we could have, but our space here was a little bit limited as well. So it was actually worked out really well that the walls were leaning in, which allowed us to manipulate. So now in this bottom corner cabinet, I call this it's like their 47-inch lineal corner cabinet. I like this one the best because I can manipulate it this way and I can manipulate this cabinet via this filler this way. So then once I know these uppers where they're going to hang in a true fashion, then I adjust everything off of this corner so that like over here, as I'm coming over this way, my fridge panel is perfectly plumb and lined bottom to top. Okay? And same thing over here. I was able to shimmy this corner cabinet off the wall, move it this way, so that this cabinet ended up lining up right here. And then just everything translates downward. Okay? So that's the why we did the 5 reasons. And then let's just keep going on other things that we had to keep in mind. Now, because this was an old house and there was things all over the map, I had help obviously, but I took this level. You could just take a straight edge. It needs to be pretty long. I had to extend it out, but I'll just show you quickly what I had to do. The crunchy old level, seen better days. Essentially, I had to plane cross this front. And basically I had to set, this corner was pretty much set true. This cabinet, I made it so that it would have plane through so that it was in line and straight. So it's technically off of that wall a little bit. But the reason you want to do that is because the stove's sitting here, and if Wayne and I would have just slammed this up against the wall, we would have been off probably 3/8, half an inch. And so the front of your stove, the countertop wouldn't match, and it would be all skewed. So those are that's just, yeah, glad we thought of that. Straighten this through. The front counter edge is flush and true and all that stuff. So that's another reason why the custom plywood bases are important and so helpful, because I screwed this down. It's solid as a rock. I didn't use the rail system that Ikea suggested I use, and I wouldn't have been able to because I had to pull it off the wall 3/8. Another thing that I want to just say, there is a slight discrepancy in the size and dimensions because this is where the stove goes. And instead of going bang on 30, which you can do, I went 30 1/4. And then when the countertop goes on, it's going to overhang about 1/8 of an inch on each side. But if something's not super square, at least you could be overhanging here and flush at the back. You'll never see it, but it's better than the countertop being flush here and then having to skew it back this way or something. So just gives you that little extra space to get the countertops so that when your stove slides in, everything looks really nice and parallel and all your lines are nice and clean. Alex is filming today and she gets to try to follow me and see where I'm going to jump to next, because in here is, yeah, it's the hamster wheel's just about to fall off. Now, when we do like a microwave plug or any plug that's inside a cabinet, this is for the cabinet lighting, so they'll reduce this down to low voltage, but it might be hard to see, but there's always a gap between the back panel and the wall, and I just put a piece of plywood in there before I hang the cabinet. So you just have to put the piece of plywood on before you hang the cabinet and get it placed, and then when you hang it, it just allows you to put the cover plate on the electrical, and that way when you tighten it, it just doesn't bow the heck out of the back panel of the cabinet. One thing I want to mention is you can never get an upper cabinet to actually sit super flush to the ceiling, and that's because the way the uppers hang on that rail, you need to be able to lift the upper cabinet higher and then drop it onto the rail. So this is about a quarter inch is about as close as you can get to the ceiling. So that's what we've done there. I also want to give you a little tip here on what we did before we put the fridge in, because it has water to it. And it's just simple. I do this with dishwashers and fridges. Always silicone the 3 sides. And that way, if something ever leaks, it's not just leaking in behind somewhere that's taking years and years to notice. You'll see water flow out the front, and then you'll notice you have a problem right away. So dishwashers, fridges as well. Now, because this job, the floors were out of level, the ceiling was out of level, basically I had to figure out the lowest part of the ceiling. That dictated our upper height, which wasn't standard to the IKEA system. So then when we followed over to the pantry, we actually had to do this last in order to figure out what the toe kick height was. So when we built this custom plywood base, everything was just dictated from the uppers, which ended up being a 3-inch base. And so that's what this ended up being. And that's perfectly fine. It's just something to be aware of. Another thing while we're at it, because we have the plywood bases, we don't use their plastic toe kick material. I just take panels, so whether it's the 36 by 96 or the 15 by 90s, whatever it is, we already have a piece of finished toe kick here. So I'm just gonna leave it angled out just in case the homeowner, he's gonna attach those, but we usually just brad nail those right near the top, and that's how we finish the bases when we do it the Kody way. So if you refer back to the video footage before we hung the uppers, the rail that was on the wall was actually, you could tell that was quite out of level on the ceiling. But now that everything is actually in place, it worked out perfectly. The low spots and the jogs in all the cabinets, it actually worked out to our advantage, where you can't really tell that the ceiling is that bad out of level, but it's probably 1.5 inches at least. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. I think we did a pretty good job of covering all the things you want to check before you install, and also all those extra bonus tips as well. Just if you guys have questions or comments, just ask away down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Boom. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Do it sound good?
We sound good. All right, let's try again.
Do you want me to shoot that again? Or am I still good?
Okay, still
Oh.
okay.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You
Okay.
can start from the top now, about the 3, 4, 5 method.
Okay. Did I? Oh, okay. I pull my tape all the way to 10 feet, which is back there. Or no, 8 feet, sorry. Should I reshoot that? Okay.
Well, now.
Now
Yeah.
I'd never swear I'm a perfect little angel. Right, Alex?
Yes.
Yes.
And if you do all covered up.
How do you want me to sit? Do some squats. Baby squats, my kind. Now, because on this, I think we'll just wrap this bad boy up.
Wrap her up.
Okay, let's wrap it. So that should give you enough information to get yourself started. All right. Why is this hard? It shouldn't be hard. I said install way too many times.